Good morning. Many thanks for joining us. My name is Lillian Muli and this is Citizen Extra. In this news, I will be bringing you live pictures from Lillian Towers here in Nairobi County, Tom Mboya Labour College in Kisumu County, and Bandari College in Mombasa County as IEBC meets candidates for the pre-nomination meeting presided over by returning officers across the country. Now, the objective of the meeting includes clarifying the legal and operational requirements for nomination of candidates. Also, topics we're following for you this hour. NASA leader Raila Odinga has dismissed independent candidates despite throwing their support behind him. Instead, he has asked voters to go for a six-piece voting. What does this mean for the presidential vote? We'll be interrogating this. And also this morning, gubernatorial candidates who are yet to name their running mates are in a rush against time. But watch how they do it. Yesterday, Meru Senator Kiraitu Murungi, who is running for governor in Meru, and Mombasa Senator Hassan Omar, who is running for governor in Mombasa, named their running mates. Today, presidential candidate Cyrus Jirongo is expected to name his running mate as well. Also on the show this morning, we discuss the running mate factor. Well, good morning once again and welcome to Citizen Extra on this Tuesday, the 23rd day of May 2017, 76 days before the general election. I'm Lillian Muli, and joining me this morning are analysts Ray Ochieng and Boniface Mwangi, who is an aspirant Starehe constituency with the Ukweli party. And before we get down to the discussion, we'll be interrogating the number of candidates in this election, and let's take a look at that. There are 19 presidential candidates, and among those are more than 15,000 candidates who will be vying for various elective offices in the August general election. Now, of the 19 presidential candidates, 11 will be vying as independents. The 47 governor positions will be contested by 246 candidates, while 349 aspirants have thrown their hats in the ring for the Senate seats. The 47 woman representative positions will be a battle between 327 candidates, while at 2,078 candidates are in the race for the 290 National Assembly seats. The 1,450 wards will be a showdown between 12,060 candidates who have set their eyes on the member of the county assembly seats. At 1,801, Jubilee has the highest number of candidates in the August general election, with the Orange Party ODM coming second with 1,289 candidates. Maendeleo Chapchap has 911 candidates, while KANU and Amani National Congress have 695 and 639 candidates respectively. Let's proceed. And the Wiper Party and Ford Kenya have a combined candidature of 1,263, while Chama Cha Mashinani, PNU and Democratic Party have less than 400 candidates. IEBC has given parties until tomorrow to correct any anomalies in their list of candidates to pave way for printing of ballot papers in readiness for the August general election. And those are the figures we have for you as we approach the August polls. Our guests in studio this morning, Boniface Mwangi, Ukweli Party aspirant Starehe constituency, and of course with us this morning is Ray Ochieng, who is a political analyst. So we want to look, gentlemen, at the pre-nomination meetings. This, of course, in line with IEBC's preparedness for the general elections. Starting with you, Boniface, let's begin with the IEBC scorecard. In your opinion, are we ready for the polls?
I think we're ready for the polls. They have been able to. They've been very clear and transparent in their undertakings, and they are, as a party leader, I think they're very much ready for the elections. There's a lot of sideshows in court between NASA and IEBC, but those are just sideshows. So I think you're ready for the elections.
Boniface, as a party leader, as you've mentioned, is taking the narrow path, Lillian, and I think it's good rhetoric. But to come to fact, IEBC is having some little bit of challenges, and we know with due fact that they came in late. but that again does not make us also to put them into specs and put optics in terms of how is their scorecard. In terms of their scorecard, they are doing many things which sometimes comes out clearly only when they are pushed to the wall. So in terms of the opaqueness, Lillian, and the transparency that IEBC should bring into this process, it's a little bit below par because we know what the Constitution talks about in Article 86 from A to C, and it's clear at A that this election should be verifiable, should be transparent, should be accountable, should be accurate. So Lillian, in terms of the threshold that has been put, the premium that has been put on these elections is too high, and IEBC has not met that framework.
And Boniface, talking about these pre-nomination meetings, they will be conducted by the respective returning officers from the Electoral Commission across the country. Looking back at the party primaries, there are certain returning officers that were criticized as being biased, that there was claims of rigging under the watch of the returning officers. So how to ensure that indeed this exercise will be flawless and transparent?
So the party nominations are done by returning officer from the party, not IEBC. So there's a clear distinction between the two. I think agreeing is actually rare. I think what you need from IEBC at this moment going forward is a verifiable voter register. You need to know how many voters are registered, in what areas, and the turnout. So there's a need for transparency. I think what you need to do for every voter who is going to vote in August 8th, you need to guard the vote. So if you vote, you say, I've voted, and this is my proof. So the only way to actually ensure that elections are transparent is not going to come from IEBC alone. It's going to come from respective political parties and the party agents, and ensuring that we guard the vote. Because you cannot trust one institution to guard the vote. You know very well that IEBC is overstretched. So the responsibility of guarding the vote is not only for IEBC, but every single voter and every single candidate. It's actually in everybody's interest to have a transparent and an election that with full of integrity. And that can only be done by one body. So we don't need to project our fears and everything on IEBC. We need to ask ourselves, what can I do as a party leader? What can Ray do? What can a voter do? What can Uhuru do? What can Raila do to ensure that the elections are transparent and free of violence? That is our responsibility. Right,
and Ray, of course, again, yes, the political party primaries were not handled by the IEBC, but lessons drawn from that process that IEBC can borrow from, particularly as regards the returning officers who were in several instances accused of rigging and bias.
Lillian, when you mention lessons learned, and sometimes it's always good to make sure that we put into introspect in terms of look at what happened in the post-election violence. We had 350,000 Lillian people displaced. We had 1,500 people who died in the post-election violence, and I believe Boniface Mangi did a good job in terms of that. So that just tells you, Lillian, what we must avoid moving forward. So in terms of what IEBC needs to do to make sure that all cards are on the table, all the players are involved, and I know involvement does not mean that every opinion has to be given all the time, because again that will also make us, right now we have I think 75 days thereabout to go. So in terms of that threshold, Lillian, they have to win the confidence, and winning the confidence of the Kenyan people is based upon them. And I agree, as Boniface is putting it, as much as it is all the players' responsibility to guard the votes. Remember, in terms of constitutionally, who has been given the mandate to make sure that this perception of the Kenyan people, and Lillian, IEBC may be doing a lot of things, but if they don't bring it to the Kenyan people, we were here during the voter verification, and we realized some Kenyans are even going, and Lillian, some of them, not the normal pedestrian down there, a Kenyan that is informed, going to register, for heaven's sake. And at this point, we should be talking about voter verification. So in terms of voter education, which I expect Boniface should have also really made a lot of noise in terms of making sure that he's support-based, because I know he's really mobilized young people and people down there on the ground. Lillian, then how are they educated enough in terms of knowing what steps to be done? I have some little bit of statistics. In the last elections, Boniface, we had almost around 53 million by non-state actors in terms of just ensuring that the common mwananchi down there, who is forming about 60% and who will be used by politicians to bring about all the polarizations and the negative parts of the polarization. So voter education. So Lily, I really agree that as much as we may point that IEBC is not the only sole one to be blamed as an organ, but there are critical parameters that are not being done.
So as a voter and as an aspirant, I'm educating my voters. But remember very well, December last year, December 12th, on Jamhuri Day, President Uhuru Kenyatta banned civic education. He said it's not needed, it's not necessary, it's actually interference from the West.
And do you agree?
I don't agree with that.
Yes.
So from the moment, that means that non-state actors cannot be able to do anything because they are banned.
That's why I'm supporting you. That's why at this point, Lillian, Boniface should have also really come out clearly in terms of voter verification and voter education.
I'm saying one thing, so it's too late to do voter education. It's actually very too late.
Okay.
What we need right now is voter verification. You need to know how many people are registered, where they are registered, and then you need to have enough ballot papers, and when you vote, the votes are tallied.
But on verification also there is need for education.
We have had two
we're
elections.
Talking about, actually, on the issue of ballot papers, the Electoral Commission is facing the daunting task of designing ballot papers that can accommodate the high number of candidates for various seats. Let's talk about that, Bonnie, and the challenge that poses therein.
It's not a challenge. You can print things overnight. If there are 40 people running for one position, respect their democratic right to run, and print a full scap or 10 pages of the same thing, and people will go to the ballot box and say, this is the person that I want. So we cannot have that as an excuse. IEBC has the money, they have the technical and support to be able to do anything that they want. Let's not have excuses. 15,000 people vying in a country of 44 million people is not a bad number. It's doable. So we should not try and excuse IEBC for inefficiency or being unable to do their job. If they're not able to carry out these elections, if someone is a commissioner or a director or a chair of IEBC and is unable to carry out his mandate, he should resign instead of coming up with excuses. Because when you're given a job, you're given it because you're qualified to do it. So if you have an excuse of why you cannot do it, then you step aside, and among 44 million Kenyans we replace before elections. Don't you agree?
Lillian, now Boniface is saying the truth now.
Yeah.
Yes, Lillian.
So, we're talking about the numbers recorded for particular elective positions and how this could present a fresh challenge to IEBC. You talked about voter education, and I'm talking about the long ballot paper, which we cannot ignore. You know, how this is likely to pose a headache for voters, especially the elderly and the uneducated. You know, at some point, depending on how they fit the names of these aspirants, you know, people might find it necessary to fold the paper, identify symbols, and all of that. How to cope with that challenge?
Lillian, you really rightly put it. I know Boniface is doing a lot of things, but he's not conducted the primaries, Lillian. And look at what happened in terms of even the names. You even got aspirants talking about their names actually not captured well. So in terms of the back and forth and the whole the rigorous nature that the process can have, we may look at it, Lillian, just that they are just papers that have to be printed. I believe they are machineries. Yes, they are structures, and there are all these tools that can make sure that this is done. But remember, there is a lot of integrity that has to go in terms of making sure that there is no stone that has been that has not been turned. Remember, from the register. In terms of the names of the candidates. So I don't really think that we can take it that easy, because we have seen what parties have done. And remember, Jubilee, CORD, and I believe also Boniface's party that didn't do this. Remember, they also tried to print out their ballots. You saw what happened with Jubilee. They underestimated in the first batch. So it tells you this is a challenge. So I agree with Boniface to an extent. I know he's up in arms, but I agree with him to an extent. But Lillian, we must a little bit also take time so that before we put those papers and pictures on the papers, due diligence has been followed, and so that we don't have disputes. Because Lillian, remember, some gubernatorial positions are going to be hotly contested. That even a win of 30 votes can even tear some counties apart. True.
So, you know, going back to today's pre-nomination meetings, the objective of this meeting includes clarifying the legal and operational requirements for nomination of candidates. And let's listen in to what is currently happening.
Representatives here today. Mine is a brief one. It's an honor to welcome our chairman, Wafula Chibukati, to give opening remarks, and then after that we'll go through the rest of the program. Mr. Chairman, you know, at the IEBC we have a way of welcoming our chairman, and if you could please help me to welcome our chairman with makofi. Tunaweza mkaribisha na makofi.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I also want to add to Immaculate's voice. We're sorry for starting late due to some commitments which befell me on the way. But we shall try and finish in good time so that you go to your other engagements, which I believe include campaigning informally outside there, because the campaign period is not yet. I wish to welcome you to this session of pre-nomination meeting. This is mainly for presidential candidates. I'm pleased to note that we are holding similar meetings throughout the country in all the 47 counties, which meetings in the counties are presided over by the county returning officers. And also we have similar meetings in the constituencies presided over by our constituency returning officers. That's 290 constituencies spread across the country. This meeting today brings about 20 presidential candidates. I believe you are 20, of which 8 are from political parties and 12 are from 12 are independent candidates. This is a sure indication of an increased accessibility and inclusivity in our country's electoral processes. On behalf of the Commission, I want to assure you that the Commission remains committed to creating a level playing field for all of you and ensuring that our electoral process remains free, fair, and credible for all aspirants. Ladies and gentlemen, we are happy to host you today, and this meeting in particular provides an opportunity for the Commission to clarify any grey areas on matters nomination. As it has been shown, the objectives for the meeting today are very clear, and the Commission will make presentations which will focus on qualifications for presidential candidates, for both independent candidates and political party nominees. We will also address what each aspiring presidential candidate is expected to bring on nomination day, that's on the 28th and 29th of this month, the setup of the nomination venue and or layout of the nomination center, and lastly the schedule of presentation of papers on that day. This has been necessitated by the fact that in 2013 we had a lot of issues, and some of you are sent back for purposes of getting more papers or this and that. We hope this will not be there this time if we all become attentive in this meeting and make ask any questions so that we resolve any issues with re-nomination, so that on the 28th or 29th we should have a seamless nomination process. The Commission has noted that this process is crucial, and especially considering that we didn't have it in 2013, and we hope to improve this year, this time around. Allow me to emphasize that the statutory time for submitting the list of supporters for every presidential candidate has now elapsed. We expect to give feedback to you in the course of the next 2 days on the level of compliance. We expect that the affected parties will make the necessary corrections, if any, to avoid any disappointment on the nomination date later in the week. I also want to take this opportunity to remind all the Kenyan voters out there that verification of voters processes is going on. I urge all registered voters to attend this exercise. It's important that every Kenyan voter verifies their biometric details to enable the Commission to make the necessary corrections before sometimes we don't want to disenfranchise any Kenyan, and this exercise is important, and you as leaders, as candidates, please tell your supporters it's necessary that they do verification so that we correct any mistakes during this process before we do the final register. So on behalf of the Commission, I wish to welcome you once again, and we look forward to fruitful deliberations. We shall also have a question and answer session so that if there are any questions you have, any burning issues, we should be able to address them. So thank you very much, and let us engage. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Chairman Chebukati, for those brief and very concise remarks. I have now the honor of going through what you as aspirants or your representatives will need to be able to qualify for candidates to run as presidential candidates in 2017. So we have the whole layout of what the nomination process will look like. And it is also important for us to ensure that we are as clear as possible on what the legal and operational requirements are for you to be nominated, you or your representative to be nominated as aspirants. We also want that at the end of this meeting we are able to look at the possible conflict areas and resolve them before the nomination day. And we also would like, by the time we finish this meeting, to also agree on the timetable of the nomination days, which days, because we have 2 days of nominations, we need to be able to agree on which days, which candidates will appear at KICC. So we hope that that is what we'll finish with at the end. But let me turn on to the presentation that you have there. The provisions in the Constitution are very clear on what one is required to have to meet the qualifications of running as a presidential candidate. The first, of course, is that you have to be a citizen by birth, not by naturalization. You have to be a Kenyan citizen by birth. You also have to have met the qualifications to be able to run as a member of parliament. More important, you also have to be a registered voter. If you are not a registered voter, you cannot run as a presidential candidate or a candidate at all in any position. You also need to have a nomination by a political party or be an independent candidate. In addition, which we have received from most of you, you must be able to be nominated by not fewer than 2,000 voters from each of a majority of the counties. This is, you need to have about 48,000 signatures. We have received some, we have not received some of them, but we'll get into the specific details with each of the aspirants at the appropriate time. In addition, one needs to hold a degree from a university recognized by the relevant ministry. The requirements that I have outlined also apply to the running mate, that is the person who will be running as the deputy president. What are the disqualifications? There are a number of disqualifications that the Commission, under the leadership of Chairman Chebukati, will be looking at very carefully as we look at your documents. The first is that if you do not owe allegiance, if you owe allegiance to a foreign state, then you do not meet the qualifications to run as a president. You should, if you are a public officer or acting in any state or other public office, let me just explain that this qualification, however, does not apply to a sitting president, a sitting deputy president, or a member of parliament. So if you are a deputy president, you are president, or you are a member of parliament, you are not disqualified, so you can run for the office of the president. Another criteria for disqualifying one is if one has participated directly or indirectly in any public fundraising, or what we commonly call Harambee, within 8 months preceding a general election or during an election period. So if we have evidence from voters or from Kenyan people that you have participated in a Harambee during that period, then that is a reason for you to be disqualified as a candidate. This disqualification, however, excludes fundraising for purposes of an election or if you're fundraising for a political party. So if you're fundraising for a political party or you're fundraising for yourself as an independent candidate, then you cannot be disqualified on those grounds. The next one is that we're guided by a rule of law. So our laws or our constitution then provides that you will only be disqualified if all possibilities of appeal or review of a relevant sentence or decision regarding disqualification are fully exhausted. So after all those mechanisms of law have been exhausted, then you will be disqualified. But as long as there is an appeal ongoing, then our constitution provides that the due diligence has to be done on that. Then another disqualification that singularly applies to myself and Chairman Chebukati and other commissioners is that at any time within the 5 years immediately preceding the date of election held office as a member of the Election Commission. Chairman, too bad for you. Then the next disqualification is that has not been a citizen of Kenya for at least 10 years immediately preceding the date of election. And then the next ones are that if you are of unsound mind, then you will be disqualified, or if you are undischarged bankrupt, then you will also be disqualified. Also, if you are a subject of imprisonment of at least 6 months at the date of registration as a candidate or at the date of election, then you will be disqualified. Also, which is something that is very important to the chairman and to the commission, is that if you are found in accordance with any law to have misused or abused state office or public office, or in any way you would have been deemed to have contravened Chapter 6 of the Constitution, then you will be disqualified. Then lastly, if you have had all possibility of appeal or review of a relevant sentence or decision regarding your disqualification fully exhausted. So those are the qualifications that we've outlined and grounds for which one can be disqualified as a presidential candidate. I'd like to go through a few other important things. According to our laws, you need to have a proposer and a seconder. Regulation 38B of the Election General Regulation 2010 outlines that a proposer and a seconder for a political party shall be voters registered in the respective electoral areas. So they must be registered voters to be able to propose or second you. Then the Elections Act also stipulates that supporters have to be members of the candidate's political party. These are regulations related to those who are coming in as candidates from political parties. We have a different set of requirements for independent candidates. First, one cannot, for you to run as an independent candidate, you cannot be a member of a party. You cannot be a member of a party, a political party, for at least 3 months immediately before the date of the election. And for that, I think you've already, for those who are running as independent candidates, you've already received the required papers from the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties confirming that you have not been a member of a political party 3 months immediately before the date of the election. So that is one of the documents that we've been looking at and reviewing. Then you've all submitted to us, independent candidates, a symbol which is required by law. You also are required to have 2,000 supporters who are not members of any party, but they must be registered voters from each of the majority counties. So you also require 48,000 signatures from at least 24 counties, but they cannot be members of political parties. We'll be checking that very carefully. You're also required to have a proposer and a seconder, and those shall be those people who are registered voters, but they also cannot be members of political parties. Those are the requirements that relate to independent candidates. Then you will have a series of forms that you'll be required to fill. So you have Form 12, nomination paper for presidential election. You have Form 13, which is a statutory declaration for purpose of nomination for election. I think you will find in your folders some of the samples, or you will be provided samples of those forms so that you know exactly what you're supposed to fill. Very important on the passport. We need to have passport size photos for all the aspirants, and we need 2 passport size photographs, and we need those provided both in hard copy and soft copy so that we can be able to upload them. And remember that those are the photographs that will be used on the ballot. So just be careful where you're taking the pictures on the background. We have seen some very interesting pictures in interesting places that you would not want to have that on your ballot. So please just make sure that the picture that you send to us is one that you would like the Kenyan people to identify you as. This means that it must be in a JPEG format, and it must be in color. The background must be white with no shadows. The photo size must have a maximum size of 1 MB. The resolutions must be 1028 by 768 pixels. Right? Is that correct? Immaculate, is that correct? The dimensions? Okay. Sorry? The dimensions are 1028 times 768 pixels. The aspect ratio of the camera should be 4:3. The photo must be of portrait orientation. So I really need to emphasize this because we have already seen some of the pictures, and we just want to be sure that you send what is accurate, what is required, so that we don't send you back. I think that is. Immaculate reminds me that the presentation will be shared so that you have all the information, so that you read and you know exactly what you are required to have, so that ukija KICC tarehe 28 ama tarehe 29 tusije tukakurudisha. I think there's one more point that I really need to emphasize here today on chapter 6. I will emphasize it again here. The chairman has set up a committee, and chapter 6 integrity committee that brings together various actors, that brings together the EACC, the Commission on Higher Education, that brings together those who are charged with the responsibility of checking on your bankruptcy status, those that have been given the responsibility of checking whether you're of sane mind. I don't know whether they are part of it. But we don't want this to come as a surprise to anybody, that we will be looking at all these qualifications, and that you are still aspirants until the time that you are declared candidates. And that all these provisions that are there in the Constitution, we will be looking at them very carefully. We will be looking at your signatures very, very carefully to make sure that they meet the requirements of the law. And we'll be looking at all the documents, including university degrees that are required for aspirants and their deputies, so that we make sure that we are meeting the expectations of our Constitution and our laws. With that, I thank you very much and hand back the mic to our Deputy I'm going to forget and say this. I always call our deputy cabinet secretary because I can't pronounce the other term that is very complicated. So I'm handing over to our deputy cabinet secretary to take you through the next stages. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good morning. Our chairman, Wafula Chebukati, the commissioner present, directors from the commission and officers, our esteemed guests, aspirants, either sponsored by a political party or independent. We are very happy to have you here, whether you came personally or you're having your representative, and therefore I'm here to take us through nomination day activities. We all know we are here because of the nomination day, which is coming around the corner on the 28th and the 29th of May. I therefore want to just remind us that that's this coming Sunday and Monday. And just move the slide kindly. So the nomination for the presidential position will take place on the 28th and 29th of May 2017. The venue will be the Kenyatta International Convention Center, KICC, here in Nairobi. The time from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. and from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. What to bring on nomination day? If you look at your folders, you will see a checklist that has been provided. It's a very detailed checklist. Having heard what Dr. Rosaline Akonde spoke to, which was following the chairman's presentation, you will notice that the very important document is supposed to come along with on that day. So we have a checklist for the presidential election for political party-sponsored candidates. We also have a checklist for independent candidates. Please look at the folder. I will just, for example, just sample out the presidential candidate, the political party-sponsored presidential candidate checklist. You will notice overlaid we have nomination requirements, and we want to look at it detail by detail, blow by blow, because on that day we do not want you to submit or fail to submit what is not required, or to fail to submit what is required. For instance, you need to confirm whether the name of the candidate and the running mate, now as you're making the submission, was submitted to the commission and details uploaded on the candidate registration and management system. That's important. We all know we have the candidate registration management system. So just for you to tick the box and say that was done. And to confirm the issue of the supporters, 2,000 supporters from majority of the counties in the prescribed format again. And this applies again even to the independent candidates. You need to make sure that you look at those checklists. They're very detailed, and you ensure you comply with them come nomination.
The IEBC, they're giving a brief on the pre-nomination exercise. The meetings will be conducted by the respective returning officers from the Electoral Commission across the country. According to IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati, the objective of the meeting includes clarifying the legal and operational requirements for nomination of candidates. Joining us in this conversation this morning is Stephen Mogaka. He's an aspirant West Mugirango, a constitutional lawyer and political analyst. We're also joined by Boniface Mwangi, Ukweli Party aspirant, Starehe constituency, and Ray Ochieng, who is a political analyst. Gentlemen, as we proceed with this conversation, I'll start with you, Stephen. We're hearing the IEBC there talking about legal and operational requirements, and among the issues they've raised as a determinant to disqualification is if one has participated in a Harambee 8 months to the election. Why that stands out is because I think just about every aspirant I know has engaged in an aspirant very recently or in the last few months. So the challenge that poses, among other issues such as degree requirements, if you owe an agency or a foreign state. Let's talk about that.
Thank you, and good morning, viewers. I think the biggest challenge IEBC is going to face is that disqualification criteria debarring aspirants who have been participating in fundraising, because fundraising has not been defined in the Act. And by and large, we have seen many a candidate, or rather many an aspirant, in one way or another, getting involved in philanthropic activities. And whether those philanthropic activities amount to fundraising is a question yet to be interpreted by courts of law. And it will be interesting to see how the IEBC committee in charge of disqualifying persons who have involved themselves in fundraisings, how they are going to apply that law. Because the question then comes, does participating in a church activity, giving your tithes, giving your offertories, does that amount to fundraising? Does assisting a sick person get medical attention qualify to debar somebody as fundraising? Does participating in funeral expenses, donations, do they qualify to debar somebody as fundraising? So is a gray area that is yet to be interpreted, and until one or two of those candidates are disqualified and they challenge the matter in a court of law to get proper interpretation, we are yet to see how this works out.
And Bonnie, you yourself are an aspirant as well, and I know that previously in an interview I hosted you, and you said that you appeal for funds from the electorate, from your supporters. I'm not sure that is fundraising, but let's talk about, for you, the disqualification criteria by IEBC. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it will be very hard to follow through on the Harambee Act, because it's actually legal for any public officer or even member of parliament to take part in Harambee. It's the law, but will IEBC be able to actually implement that law and ensure that it's bad? One of the biggest fundraisers in this country is the deputy president. He's on record of giving out millions of shillings in fundraisers. So if they're going to censure someone, actually they'll stop the deputy president from vying. So I think they have aspirational rules and they're not going to follow through. But also, I think taking part in a funeral meeting or helping someone who is sick is not fundraising. Or even an aspirant actually asking guys to be given money, that's not the fundraising they're referring to. The one they're referring to actually is actually where a candidate uses money to try and influence people to vote for them. So when you go to a Harambee and give 1 million shillings and you're trying to get them to like you, and I think one of the key things you should focus on is voter bribery. I didn't hear them talking about voter bribery. There's a lot of bribery that is going on. People have been caught on tape bribing voters, but no one has been charged in court. And you have to remember that in the history of IEBC, and that is or ECK in the last election, we haven't seen any single person convicted because of floating electoral laws. So unless we start biting now, all they have is a back. And with a back without a bite, people get used to them backing. I would like to see them disbarring candidates for bribing people, for floating the election laws before the election. Lakini wache kelele kusema tutafanya. Simfanye. Even right now in party nominations there was violence against women, there are people who had fake documents, there are people who are bribing voters. How come they haven't been charged?
And Ray, as we take a break, your thoughts on the same 8 months, if you participated in a Harambee fundraising 8 months to the election, you'll be automatically disqualified.
Lillian, it's good news because it means we don't have elections. Because yeah, if we go that way, and I think
there'll be no one vying.
There's no one vying, and actually all Kenyans should be called upon. From apart from Boniface, who's got a very nice policy about no bribing, but no voter bribing. So Lillian, it's too late, and I would agree with Boniface here in terms of the teeth of our institutions are a little bit. They have no teeth. Actually, they have no teeth. Yeah. So So coming to say that you're going to block these people, and if at all you were serious, Lillian, this should have even taken place much earlier, to a point whereby all parties should have brought the names of the aspirants and they are vetted. And that's the time you could even tell a governor, Mr. Governor, thank you so much, you don't have a KCSE certificate, and we are going to pick another person. But these are just political convenient statements. And again, still it will also eat into the credibility of IEBC, because if you talk about 8 months to election, Lillian, we see politicians in the glaring presence of cameras bribing and conducting Harambees, for that matter,
as chief guest,
with shining with shining things on there. I don't know what those things are called, but
meta.
Yeah, metas. So if we are saying that and nothing is going to be done, still it's the normal games. But it can be good news, Lillian. Let me be patriotic. Let me be positive on this.
There are rules for the future.
We may not have election.
Okay, very interesting perspectives. We're taking a short break now, and also this morning, gubernatorial candidates who are yet to name their running mates are in a rush against time. We'll be looking at how they're going to be doing it, as well as who they'll be naming as their running mates. Yesterday, Meru Senator Kiraitu Murungi, who is running for governor in Meru, and Mombasa Senator Hassan Omar, who is running for governor in Mombasa, named their running mates. Today, presidential candidate Cyrus Jirongo also expected to name his running mate. We'll be discussing the running mate factor right after the break on Citizen Extra. Stay tuned.